Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the Hidden Agenda event. But before we get into that, we're going to talk to our junkie from this weekend's Stooge for the Throne tournament game 2. Welcome, Nathan.
What up? It's your boy coming at you live from Los Angeles, coming at you after a devastating Stooge for the tournament loss.
A loss, and you were so close, our boy. You really were in it up until the very end.
I would say I had to really complain my way into it, and then eventually I was in it, but I was never comfortable. It was always an uneasy being in it.
Yeah, fair enough. That is true. From the commentary booth, we thought you did a great job and were making all the right calls and decisions and moves. So really good stuff.
Oh no. I derped so hard. I want to set the record straight for the fans. So I from the beginning, map build, I put the system with 2 planets against Mechatol. That was a big mistake. That set me back so much. I don't know what I was thinking. I should have saved that to be a little closer to home, given that everything else in my bag was either a 1-planet system or it was just like 3 empties.
Well, it wouldn't be a game with Nathan if you didn't derp before round 1 even started.
Yeah, I forgot to get gas coming to Rand's place to play some TI. Yeah.
So Yin actually won that game, Carnal, and there was some great moments of stoogery.
Disgusting.
Do you have any highlights in that sense?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, my favorite one was at the end when I was just like, when I knew it didn't matter. Them playing, what's the action card that let me re-roll my PDSs?
Scramble frequency.
That was great. Oh man, that was amazing. Getting their support so I could get a point in the agenda phase.
Yeah, so early game, Seed of an Empire comes out, and you got 2 points off of it by receiving Yssarl's support as a gift to bump you up to be equal points with all the players who were at the bottom, and you all went up together.
Lovely. As I should. Or they could have just given me the point, you know?
It worked out for you, because you netted 2.
Yeah, I suppose. But then I was like locked by Yssarl messing with me. I was like, I'm going to lose their support if I go back for the attacks at any point, especially after they took planets next to my home system.
That was obviously their move once they gave you that support.
Yeah.
Because they did end up getting cut out of the swaps because they didn't have their own.
Well, we had a secret thing going. I was like, hey, how about when I take those planets back, we swap? But then somebody else said yes first. So I got to say yes to the dress. I got to say yes to whoever's willing to make deals. So
Absolutely. What about you, Nathan? Did you stooge? Do you feel like you had stooging moments?
Oh, I definitely had 0 stooging moments. I think that in order to stooge, you've got to be in a position to stooge, and I was just not in a position to be giving away anything. I think if the most stoogery I did was selling black market so cheap all the time that I was allowing everybody to get their little relics, having their little fun.
Yeah, you probably missed out on a handful of important relic pulls. Oh, and we got to talk about your Crown of Amphidia derp.
Oh, I mean, it was derp after derp after derp. Map build. I had Jolnar in my bag. I probably should have grabbed them instead. Crown of Amphidia, yep. I saw it and I was like, well, at that point, did we even need to have attachments?
No, you didn't. That was your first explore in the game, actually, and you had the option between Tomb and Candy, was it?
Yeah, it's candy. So I was like, I gotta get the candy. Like, if it gets me something, like ups my commodity bag, or something a little more juicier than the things I did get.
It's a tough decision to make because if someone else pulls the crown when you have the tomb, then you just have this giant target. So I kind of felt for your position of it's a tough choice.
Maybe if I had a little bit more defensive stuff already set up, and I knew I wasn't just going to get hammered, I probably would have gone for it. But it just didn't make sense at the time. Well, what was good was that I knew I wasn't taking any heat from my raid. That was nice. No heat from SAR. I really like their Forever War between the Waltz Titans.
Yeah, your neighbor, the SAR, was caught in big time Forever War. They were at deep risk of elimination for a certain point, but they evaded that. And I don't know if you clocked this, but if they got eliminated, you actually would have lost a point because their support no longer exists.
I did not clock that, but I'm surprised there wasn't like a whole table whisper about everybody conspiring to do that. I was channeling my inner Patrick Sahard. I was being super nice and friendly to everybody, and I think a little part of me died inside.
You know, I could see that. I really could. I called it Tournament Nathan persona. It's not the real you, but you wear it well.
Oh man, yeah. I was just like, all right, you gotta be friendly, you gotta be nice, you can't be salty, you can't let the paranoia creep in, and maybe that'll get you back in this. Seeing Sar take those 2-planet system in between my home system and Mechatol, I was like, oh, come on, keep it together. I think that was the point where I was just like, am I gonna revert back to my old ways, non-tournament Nathan?
Honestly, you handled that totally not like yourself. And I was even saying that to co-commentator Bells. I was like, the fact that you're like, yeah, stay another turn, take your time, it's fine. Real Nathan would be like, get out yesterday or else you're dead forever. Like,
Oh man.
do you have any highlights or favorite moment of the game?
I felt like the Mahawks they weren't as big of a threat as they usually are.
Yeah, I guess towards the end they got caught in their own little forever war themselves, huh?
Well, they were just like wasn't much of a war. They were just slapping around the yin, just trying to get their points. But
Yeah, one-sided hose.
I thought for sure there was going to be maybe a bigger play once I took Mechatol, some kind of table conspiracy. But
I think it was clear a little bit in the end that Carnal had it on lock. Well, Nathan, thank you for joining me for this post-game discussion. Maybe next year is finally the year you get your glory.
I'll never be Huge Master Throne again. I think it's gonna be one of the fans. Who's it gonna be?
Who's it gonna be? We'll find out. Thanks again, Nathan. And now for today's episode.
Peace.
Henry's joining me to talk about the new Hidden Agenda event.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. Excited to talk Hidden Agenda. This is an event card that Dane leaked not too long ago, similar to the previously leaked Minor Factions and Age of Exploration events. So, let me just read this card out for those of you unfamiliar with the Hidden Agenda event. During the agenda phase, only the speaker can talk. All other players must remain silent except when declaring action cards. Transactions cannot be performed during this phase. When voting, players secretly and simultaneously write their desired outcome and number of votes and pass them to the speaker. After all players have voted, the speaker secretly tallies the results and reveals only the totals to the other players. The speaker reveals who voted for which outcome only when required to resolve the outcome. The Argent Flight's votes are public and are known before the other players vote. So to summarize, voting happens secretly, simultaneously, and there is no talking, no transactions. That all makes for extra spicy time.
Very interesting take on the agenda phase, and the flavor text on this card is actually pretty cool.
Oh yeah, check it out. The speaker motioned dismissively as she spoke. And so forth. Absolute silence filled the hall as the stunned counselors tried to process what had just happened. So, Ran, you got the chance to try out this event, so I'm wondering if the flavor text turned out to be true. Were the stunned counselors just sitting there trying to process what had just happened?
1000% accurate. The outcome of the agendas were a total surprise, and that just really added to the fun of it all. So the game I played on TTPG was a great, fun, juicy game all around. We actually had the agenda deck rigged to provide a more enhanced agenda phase experience.
So we had you playing the Argent. We had Nathan playing Extra. We had Afinati playing Nalu. Bells playing Mahakt. Walt playing Necro. And Weaver taking on the Caleris. I see that you guys stacked this game with a lot of agenda ability heavy factions.
Yes, all the factions available in the draft had some sort of agenda phase ability. The faction that was left out was Hakan. So Argent, votes first and publicly, which is very interesting for the Hidden Agenda event. Extra gets hella votes. Nalu gets to see the next agenda, which is actually very interesting in agenda phases where people can't talk. Mahakt can get genetic recombination and collect these agenda phase commanders. Necro has a prediction ability to gain tech in the agenda phase. And Caleris has the ability to ignore laws and also a rider they are able to offer people.
That's such a fun spread of factions. Oof. I mean, specifically, I love Mahakt being in the mix here because you don't always see genetic recombination come out in normal games. So it's fun to just like see a variant that teases out some specific faction abilities.
Yes, we were lucky enough for our Mahakt player to have researched that tech. I almost wanted to strong arm them into it just to see, how it plays out in the agenda phase, but they did it on their own accords.
Nice. So one last thing before we get into the agendas you guys had come up in your game, I just want to know who rigged the deck?
It was Elspeth. Thank you, Elspeth, for rigging the deck for us.
Shout outs to Elspeth. All right, let's talk about your game, starting with round 1.
So round 1, Custodians was not taken. I, as Argent, took the Politics card. I bottomed both agendas, actually, Unconventional Measures and Galactic Crisis Pact. The reason I bottomed Unconventional Measures was because as Argent, I could not risk voting first and having people go against and hose my action card situation.
That makes sense.
So it was interesting because this was a scenario where, wow, this is Argent bottom, whereas other people may have left it on top for their juicy action cards.
And then you had Galactic Crisis Pact, which is the one where you choose a strategy card for everyone to follow the secondary ability of, right?
Yes, that I just bottomed because I didn't want everyone to get equal value. I was like, no.
Someone's sounding like Nathan, worrying about everyone's value they're getting.
Yes,
Very interesting.
yes.
You either die hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Exactly. Although ultimately, I will say, if I had left this on top, I would have pushed for Imperial, and maybe not getting a secret off this agenda is what cost me the game ultimately.
Wow. Hose or be hosed.
I don't know. I was just thinking maybe.
So round 2, you did finally manage to get Custodians. So in the end, there was no agenda phase round 1, but in round 2, Custodians was taken. Caleris made Mahakt Speaker and topped one agenda, bottomed the other agenda.
Yes, they said that the one up top is a spicy one. Nalu uses their commander and confirms it is a big deal.
Oh, edge of my seat.
Come with the agenda phase. Hello, Ixthian.
Oh my god, the first one.
Exciting times. We think it's a gimme, and then what happens? Rider City comes out.
Australians would be disgusted.
I put a tech rider on 4. Necro put a galactic threat and a warfare rider on 4. A hero at the table went ahead and sanctioned the against to make sure we all got our goodies. And then Mahakt used genetic recombination on Nalu, forcing them to either vote against or lose a fleet token.
That's so brutal.
So Nalu's in an interesting situation because between this and the sanction, no matter what they do, they lose a token, basically.
And then in the end, what happened? What was the vote? What came out of this Ixthian?
So I have a rider. I can't vote as Argent first and publicly. Everyone submits their votes to the speaker. The speaker reads the outcome, and there was one vote from Nalu against, as they were forced to do. And Ixthian did not go off. And it was this is what I think of when you asked me about if the flavor text was accurate, because, the council was stunned. What? Ixthian? Don't we all live for this moment in every TI game?
I love that, the very first agenda that comes up in this variant, a totally weird shenanigan outcome occurs.
Yes.
I've never seen one vote against for Ixthian and nothing else happened.
Yes, I remember actually, I think Elspeth hopped into the chat because we streamed this game and was really disappointed in us for, just really ruining her stacked agenda deck just from the get-go. So, no Ixthian, how sad sauce. But really, this was especially shocking because I am, of course, rocketing off in points like I like to do very dangerously, and I am rooting down on Mechatol at this point. People were already calling it a problem, so you'd think they wanted to see Ixthian go boom, but alas, when voting is secret and simultaneous, and no speaking is allowed, accidents happen.
Well, that sounds good for you because I think we've learned time and time again, there's nothing many players like more than hosing you when you're on Mechatol.
That's true. So
So-
it did kind of work out.
Put a little blindfold on them, and all of a sudden you're getting away with murder on Mechatol.
Very, very true. So, second agenda of that agenda phase was clandestine operations. I played a political favor that I got from Extra in exchange for a scramble frequency that I played in the previous round because I wanted my tokens at this point for game purposes. So the real next agenda was Minister of Peace. At this point in the game, I'm in my rich phase. I'm Argent, I got hella planets, so I vote all in for myself and I get my Argent bonus votes, of course. And I have Distinguished Counselor, the action card, so that's a bonus 5 votes. And between all that, I was able to put 28 votes on myself and win the agenda.
Wow, I like to moan about playing as Argent in the agenda phase, but hearing about just 28 votes on yourself, just out of the blue with those bonuses, doesn't sound so bad. Doesn't sound so bad.
It's true. I mean, this is easy numbers for Extra, but luckily not at this point in the game. This is definitely an agenda where the event card actually affected the outcome because I was the player in the lead, so people knew they didn't want to vote for me, but since no one had a way of talking or knowing who they should pool their votes for, what happened is most people just ended up voting for themselves, hoping for the best. But
Greedy.
obviously it wasn't nearly enough.
Greedy.
They kind of had to, really, now thinking about it, I think in this situation, in the future, people could just consider voting for who they think is in quote unquote last place or falling behind or like in points or has the least board presence or, you know, I think that could be the inherent way of like, wait, how are we going to stop this from going to the person in the lead who also has the most votes?
That makes sense. Okay, so then in round 3, the Mahakt player had politics and made Extra the speaker, which this seemed to be the trend. Speaker was just moving one seat back each round so far. Mahakt topped one agenda and bottomed the other. And they also actually managed to pick up the Extra commander when they snagged their fleet token this round.
Yep, and going into the agenda phase, Nalu plays Maw of Worlds, so they do not participate.
And maybe we should also mention the points at this stage of the game, Rand, because if I understand correctly, you might have had 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, I'm way ahead in the lead at this point at 7 somehow, and yeah, everyone else, I don't remember what they were at, but it was, you know, quite far behind.
It's a classic Rand blast off.
And then, of course, what is the agenda? Seed of an Empire.
So spicy.
Mahakt plays Caleris Rider on Against, which actually they had to purchase that rider in the action phase due to the no transaction rule in Hidden Agenda.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Okay.
Yes, that is something Caleris learned immediately after the first agenda phase of, oh, I need to be peddling this actively in the action phase, and it only gets to be sold once, not twice, because there's no transactions.
Yeah, I mean, it's also interesting that it means the Extra Quash is no longer viable to be sold, right? They would have to actually do the promissory note since they can't be making deals mid-agenda.
Which I got to play, and I thought that was really cool. I think it does have more value when the voting of agendas is so like imbalanced sometimes like this. And the way Mahakt actually got the Caleris Rider was a deal where Mahakt promised not to use genetic recombination on them.
That's cool. I like that deal. Ooh, and more than that, they would actually still get to vote because they had just gotten that extra commander. That's so spicy. Mahakt, no matter what the variant, Mahakt always finds a way to just be disgusting.
Fair. So yeah, because what ended up happening was they used genetic recombination on me, person in the lead seed, forcing me to vote against or lose a fleet token. I was down to lose the fleet token, YOLO, I don't know, maybe something weird would have happened, and I voted 16-4, all my votes but one, but obviously it went against. This was clear for the table, and they didn't need to talk to figure out what to do here.
Not a lot of collaboration or discussion needed to stop the person running away with it from getting more points.
It's true. And, you know, the thing about no transactions is there's no opportunity for, like, sleazy support passing to get more or less people to benefit from this seed agenda. During the action phase, Mahakt and Caleris actively held off on swapping supports so that they could get this seed point if it went against.
That's a smart move.
Yes.
So after seed, you guys had economic equality come out. How did that go?
I put my final first and public vote against because all that cash would be used by my enemies to decimate what was left of me. But obviously people love money, and economic equality tends to go for if there are no consequences to it, like someone getting an objective they should be blocked on. So people went for it. People like money.
They do. They love money. Okay, so then in round 4, Exja ended up taking politics and making Nalu the speaker. Exja also topped both of the agendas and sold Necro their alliance, which is just such a classic vile thing to have happen. So Necro was now able to vote during the agenda phase in addition to their galactic threat predictions to gain tech.
Yes, I love that combo in any game. I love that it just cancels out their one, hindrance. So at this point in the game, I have stalled out at 9 points because I was just 1 resource short of scoring my 12 resource secret for the win.
That's such a heartbreaker event to have.
It was. It really was. So me at 9, behold, what's the first agenda? It's Mutiny. Argent's worst nightmare of an agenda.
So not only are you voting first and you're public enemy number 1, but Mutiny comes out.
Yes.
That's rough. That's a rough life.
It's true. Now, this one was supposed to be maybe the most interesting agenda, and I think I botched the fun of it by getting jealous. I was horrified at the notion at missing out on a point, so I very impulsively, in just like a crazy fret, put all my votes for. All my votes at this point being nothing impressive because I'm hanging on by a thread board state-wise, knocked down a giant peg because of my score situation. And the impulsivity of this moment was just something like we talked about in a previous podcast where like I just do something that I know is totally not what should be done in this moment, but it's an emotional reaction.
That you're talking about your crazy master plan to draw a relic, right?
Yeah, that is it.
It's funny you bring that up because that's immediately what I thought of when you said that you put everything on 4 first on Mutiny.
I need to like take a breath in those moments when
Yeah.
I'm flipping out and overexcited or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard though. It's hard.
Obviously, the agenda goes against. It would have been really cool if I won the game in that moment. And I actually got the vote counts from the players this game after the fact just to see if there were any interesting numbers. And for this one, Necro was the only one who YOLO'd this and abstained voting, even though they could have with the extra alliance. And I thought that was interesting because if everyone went that greedy route, I actually would have won the game. If everyone thought, someone else is going to vote, like, I'm saving my votes for the next agenda. So, it was an impulsive vote all 4, but there was a slim chance. It's everyone's new to this hidden agenda. A slim chance greed could have, helped me cross the finish line.
I could see that happening, and I could also see there's a world, this is less likely, but I could also see a world in which everyone was like, well, that person's not going to vote for, obviously, because they're at 9. There's no way we would let it happen. And then they somehow let it happen because of that. Okay, so you went down to 8 points.
Which, sucked at the time, but ultimately led to me getting a support swap next round from Necro, which they had refused to give me in previous rounds. So I guess it kind of balanced out there because I was at the same point situation, but Necro couldn't attack me without losing a point. So that felt okay.
Yeah, not too bad. So then you guys had Public Execution come out, another spicy agenda.
Naturally, this went to the speaker, Nalu, forcing them to discard their action cards and moving the speaker back over to Extra, Nathan. After this agenda phase, actually, Caleris told us they wished we could talk in the agenda phase so they could lobby some deal to have helped them score Drive the Debate. That is one thing I realized is heavily nerfed in this hidden agenda event. That secret already hinges on at least one elected player agenda coming out. And then you also have to get the right vote count to happen, whether it's via deals. And, that's harder to do the more heat you have.
It's one of those secrets that you kind of can't just do on your own in a vacuum unless you're, for some reason, super influential that game and no one cares about the agenda or something like that.
Yeah, in this mode, Drive the Debate is best worked out in advance if possible in the action phase, which, is a lot sketchier, feels less binding, feels like you could get hosed, or, might not even ever happen. Like, what if an elected player never comes out?
Yeah, that's rough.
There's already a lot to be considering in an average TI game, and, getting this secret now requires a lot more foresight and risk-taking. So poor Caleris this game, in addition to not being able to score this secret, they also could not even sell their writer twice in a round. So their, roughly $1 to $2 value that they get each agenda phase is now halved. It was also tragic because they started the game with the secret to discard 5 action cards, and they had to toss both deadly plot and confusing legal text. So
That's brutal.
all their agenda phase fun shenanigans just like down the toilet.
All the agenda mojo was going against them for sure.
And that was our last agenda of the game because after everyone had lost their chance, Necro won on the 7, barely crossing the threshold before we would have sat through another agenda phase. GG's old Walt.
GG's.
Bro. I'm still salty. There was one resource between me and my win. Not once, but actually 2 rounds in a row, which is amazing. But that's what I get for flying too close to the sun.
So you flew too close to the sun, but broadly speaking, what are kind of like the takeaways you have from the Hidden Agenda event? What do you think? What'd you notice?
Yeah, so some other things aside from what we covered, diplomatic pressure was interesting because it's a much smoother play. Anyone's a safe target because you can't get threats or complaints in return because talking's not allowed. And also, let's be real, the target probably forgets by the end of the agenda phase that they were diplomatic pressured. Usually the heat of diplo pressure happens in the moment. So I thought that was nice. Yeah, I'm down for that.
Because also, come on, diplo pressure heat is almost always overstated. It's like, come on, just throw them something and move on with your life.
Someone's got to get first.
Yeah, someone at some point, at least one person has to get diplo pressured. Come on. But don't diplo pressure me. Thanks.
Other takeaways, Necro felt like their galactic threat was significantly impacted by the lack of communication, which makes sense. I mean, another thing that kind of hinges on deal making during the agenda phase, which hinges on also talking. And no transactions actually made neighborship on the board much more important, especially in early game debt collection.
Oh, yeah.
Mahakt and Nalu, for example, took a while to become neighbors, so they ended up canceling each other's debt when the other took trade before they were even able to pay it.
Oh, interesting. One question I do have for you, Rand, is that since the agenda phase was silent, was there like kind of a bubble and like relief laugh that happened after each agenda phase wrapped up? Like, what I want to know about like the release of tension after the silent agenda phase.
So playing action cards did sometimes make it feel a little less silent.
Okay.
The speaker is speaking to move things along and say who hasn't sent their votes in and stuff. But it is a funny moment of like everyone's back after the agenda. I also recall some agendas where people had like an accidental, and by people I mean me, like a side comment like ugh or my gosh, or like when Seed was happening or Mutiny was happening, be like, well, I'm gonna lose this anyway, and the speaker being like, shush. It is a fun challenge to remain silent in the agenda phase when you're used to just like commenting on everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Also, since I recently chatted with Absol about the Absol mod, I wondered what the Hidden Agenda event would mean for an Absol agenda game. So I hit her up and asked her what she thought. She said that she thinks the lack of transactions would probably hurt it a lot because selling the modified political secret is a big part of the Absol agendas. Since, voting the most usually comes with a perk, that would be less coordinated if people were not able to negotiate or transact in the agenda phase. There's also a little hiccup with timing windows because the Absol political secret lets you exhaust other people's planets to use as your own in voting. And it's just kind of weird of like, when does that exhaust happen? During, before, after? How do you know what you can vote? There's just a little... We, in general, in the game, had to pause and question timing windows a few times. Kind of figured it out in a way that seemed straightforward and made sense. But I can see how the absolute political secret really either gives away information or, I don't know, kind of just like fudges the mechanic.
That makes sense. So it sounds like you enjoyed it, Rand.
It was pretty fun. It was a fun experiment for sure. It was definitely enhanced, I think, by both having the agenda deck stacked and having all agenda phase factions in the game.
Yeah, I could see that.
I even would love to have the chance to be like the sort of game master in a TI game where I can not only stack the agenda deck, but rearrange it as the game goes on. Would love to react to what's happening on the board state, just kind of complicate the situation.
That's fun, because then when one half of the table is getting rich, you go, oops, economic equality is coming in.
Exactly.
Someone's getting too cozy on Mechatol. Oh, here comes Ixthian.
Yes, I really would love to do that. If you and 5 other people are interested in this experience, hit me up anytime. I'm in. I'm all in.
And I think that just about does it for Hidden Agenda. Thank you for your investigative reporting on that game mode, Rand.
My absolute pleasure. And thanks to all the players who joined me in this test. It was a blast of a game. I appreciate you all. Thanks for TIing with me.
Speaking of Fire TI players, make sure you guys tune in. This weekend, we have another Stooge for the Throne 2 tournament game featuring Nikki and last year's champion, Banner Spear, Time to find out if the reigning champ will make it back to the finals for the second year in a row.
Would be juicy, would be spicy. Good luck to everyone in the game this weekend.
Please come hang out with us in the Twitch chat.
It'll be a good time.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Twilight Imperium Junkies podcast.
If you like what we do and want to support the show, check out our Patreon, where amongst other things, you can vote on topics for future episodes.
Keep up with the TI Junkies series by subscribing on YouTube.
Until next time, keep stooging, or maybe don't.
Unless you're my stooge.